Shakyamunaya Buddhaya. Dear beloved Thầy, dear brothers, who are present right now in Solidity Meditation Hall, and dear sister, dear Sangha, wherever you are, and listening to my sharing. Today is the 2nd of August 2020. Sisters in Clarity Hamlet, and the two of us came here to be present in Solidity Hamlet to enjoy our brotherhood and sisterhood. On the way here, Sister Đăng Im asked me, "How do you feel?" I said, "I feel a joy in my heart. I feel a love in my heart. I just want to offer something real." Thầy Ngộ Không asked me. I felt happy. And I know that right now, many brothers are taking care, are doing Zoom online with lay friends, with the children, teenagers in our international Plum Village family retreat in Europe, in North America. Is the energy of being there for each other and being there for others. It's a kind of energy. It's like a new wind, and it brings this sincerity, this liveliness into our monastery, where it strengthens our desire to transmit the Dharma. So today I'm here, I also recognize it's like in the book Thầy wrote, Am Mây Ngũ, the Hermitage of the Cloud. Our teacher wrote about the bamboo forest master in the 13th century who was a king and who became a Zen master. And our teacher, really used his heart of a Zen master to write about a Zen master, this Zen master, Trần Nhân Tông. So I will practice the same way. I will use my heart of a practitioner to offer to you who are practitioners. So it's something very practical. I remember during this pandemic, all of us practice coming back to ourselves. And each of us has our own practice, of course. So during this time, that those of us who have been writing articles to contribute to this book as an offering to our teacher, Tay Con Trong Tay Thầy. And she asked me, "What will you be writing?" And I already wrote my article, but I was so interested by her article. And I thought I will share with you about this. It's not about a rebel, but it's a challenge. And the challenge is about this floating algae. Okay, so it's either it's a floating plant, floating passively, or will you be a lotus that rise high above the mud? And so to prepare for the talk, I brought with me this. This is the lotus flower that shoots up from the mud and rises beyond the water. Probably all of us have seen the lotus flowers, and this is the floating plant, the water plant, or I don't know if you call floating algae or so. This water plant, it has these pockets. They are like the savers, so that they can float. They can float, but these floating plants, they are in large quantity, so they will float. They will just go up and down with the tides. The tides is going up, it's moving up, and the tides going down. It will move, so it will just move back and forth passively with the tides or the current of the water. So these are the two images that I would like to use today. And I would like to use this image. We can look at ourselves as those who have lived in this, have lived a number of years in the world. Now we are in the practice center, or right now there are those of us who are staying home. And we all confront this COVID pandemic where we cannot really go out and we may feel confined. But if we want to find this spiritual refuge, if we are sincere in our practice, then right now we can ask ourselves again and again, do I want to float passively like this water plant, or do I want to rise above the water like this lotus flower? What am I choosing? Lokban, that's the name of the water plant. Trôi means floating. Riu riu, passively, just kind of follows along. Or lotus flower, hoa sen. Vươn means to stretch up. Or the lotus flower transcends. Lục bình trôi riu riu. So is it a water plant floating passively, or is it the lotus flower rising above all? When we look back, we are are sincere in our intention to transform, we want to end that floating along passively, being influenced, affected by situations outside or by the movies constantly played in our mind, play and replay all these years, or the fear about the past, the fear about the future, what may happen. All these things cause us to lose control. And so we float along passively with these streams or currents of emotions in our daily life. And so we are in the monastery, in the practice center. We have learned from our teacher about mindful meditation. It means to live a life of awareness, to bring the mind back to the present moment, right here and right now. It's this practice that helps us to rise above. And we're not something just floating, bobbing up and down by circumstance, but we are the master in each moment. I'm standing right here. I'm aware that I'm standing right here. I'm sharing. I'm aware. I'm sharing. I'm aware of the translator's voice. I'm holding the pen, and I'm aware of it. I'm aware whether I've put on the cap. These are the things that my mind can anchor in every moment. And that makes us as mindful practitioner. And when we say we practice meditation, it doesn't mean that we have to be in a meditation hall or in some particular corner in order to do sitting meditation. Once we practice mindfulness, then our practice takes place 24 hours a day from the moment we wake up. But if we are diligent, even while we are sleeping, our store consciousness can help us to see, oh, I'm a practitioner. And in our dream, our awareness can change the dream, can help us not to be frightful, to be fearful in our dream. The dreams can become even more positive with our awareness. And so today I would like to share with the Sangha, when we say that we want to practice meditation, when we want to say we want to practice mindfulness, what we want is one thing, but we may run into obstacles. Like in the sutra, the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the Buddha taught us about the 5 hindrances. And I will share with you briefly about the 5 hindrances. So with that we see, however sincere we are in the practice, but if we know our mind better, if we know the path of coming and going of our mind, then when we sit on the cushion, we can be calmer. The mind has more clarity, whether we're sitting on the cushion or wherever we are. So meditation are small steps like that as we learn to know about the mind. The 5 hindrances.
đây là con sẽ nói sơ về 5 hiện tượng ngăn che mà nó sẽ làm cho
these 5 hindrances, they block us. They are obstacles. They impede our mind, cause our mind not to be able to be calm or clear. So in the 4 establishments of mindfulness, we learn that the first hindrance is the craving. What the craving through our eyes, ears, nose, body, tongue. Cravings for sensation, attachment. Our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. That's the desire, the craving that we have through these sense organs. And then the second hindrance is shanghang, means the anger, irritation. The third, hôn trầm, is like drowsiness, dullness, drowsiness, dullness of the mind. The fourth hindrance is the restlessness. And the fifth hindrance is suspicion, doubt. In this desire, the craving through the sensory organs, we want like the smell, the certain sounds, certain taste, or their eyes are drowned in certain images, but they're more than that. It's the sensual pleasures like the wealth, the fame, the sensual pleasures, sex. So we see that these are our cravings that can manifest in our daily life. Sister Trúc Nghiêm just used the image between the floating plant, the water plant floating passively, versus the lotus flower that rises above the mud, the water. So as practitioners, what do we choose to be? Floating passively or rising above the obstacles? And we have these 5 hindrances as obstacles. The craving through the sensory organs, the anger, drowsiness, restlessness, and suspicion, the 5 hindrances. Dear Sangha, I'm very happy that since I got to know the practice since 1993 until now, and I ordained in 2003. So that's about 27 years since I met Thầy and the practice. Right here and right now, I would like to share with my young brothers, I still love the practice. Until this day, I love the practice. And my practice is something very basic. each movement.
con biết con ngồi xuống
How fortunate I am to know when I sit down, I am aware of my body. I'm aware which foot I'm putting up first.
con nêu tâm của con
These are where my rope is. These are the things that I anchor my mind in, so that I can be a lotus in that moment, the lotus that takes deep roots in the mud. I would like to share again why I chose this statement. Lục bình rồi riu riu. Our teacher has used this image before, so that you understand me more, and why I want to use this image of the water plant floating passively, or the lotus rising up.
người cha của con trai của con mất
So in 1993, my son's father passed away.
27 tuổi
I was only 37 years old. Then I was quite young, still beautiful,
điều kiện của mình
and I was a very independent woman. And as a Vietnamese person, I asked myself,
đặt mình đã chọn đâu ra đó để
I have calculated everything, taken care of, arranged things, and now suddenly I become a widow.
chấp nhận được
This young,
thì lúc con mới
it was such a sudden surprise. I couldn't accept it. And
người mà coi tử vi
and I went to meet a fortune teller. He read these cards, and he was very famous. And he said to me,
cái sắc diện của con
with your physiognomy, your facial body expressions, with the stars in your destiny, I see that you can also be like a water plant floating along. And the birds, the ducks, on the side of the shore, they can just pick you anytime. They can, and something in me say, no way. I cannot accept that anybody can come along and just pick me up. Because he said, you can be like that. You can be that floating water plant, or you can be the lotus. And I held on to that image. I knew what I had to do so that I can be a master of my own life. So that I would not have to try to take refuge in somebody else, even that is my own son. And it gave me this spiritual strength. And it was this spiritual strength that helped me to see that we have to make a choice. And like we choose to sit and breathe with a sound of the bell, or we will choose to be restless in our body and mind.
thưa đại chúng,
Dear Sangha,
khi mà mình thở được
When we can breathe with the sound of the bell, with our whole body, and all the cells in our body can breathe and relax and release, then in that moment, our mind can be very clear, can be very calm. And that's the energy that can help us to face the 5 hindrances, the hindrances that block our own mind. When we have a craving, a liking of some image or of a certain condition that we think will make us happy, or we think that I want things to be this way, but things don't happen the way that we want, and we're not pleased. And we go to the meditation hall and we sit down, and all of our dislikes and irritation or craving, they're still there in our mind. But if we allow, if we sit down to confront this, if we wait until we sit down and take care of them, then sometimes it's a bit late. So when we have irritation, when we have craving, then we come back to the breath. We come back to each step, so that right in that moment, we already practice release, letting go, so that that mind of irritation, anger, or craving, we can calm it down, so that we can be truly present for what is right in that moment. So each step that we take while we're going to the meditation hall, we are already in the meditation hall. And once we sit down, then the mind is already calm enough to be able to follow and to be present fully for the breath, and so that the mind is not so restless. So we practice where we are immediately. The fly likes. I put some ointment on so to prevent that to happen, but it's still not enough. In our daily life, for those of us who want to practice, we will recognize that we have in our daily movements, if we look deeply, we will see that they reflect our mind. Because I love to observe what's happening around me, right in front of me, in me, inside me. So like when we are doing walking meditation, I will observe to see how we are all walking or how we are all working together. So with my experience with the practice, I can see that, that person in this moment is upset, or that moment, in this moment, that another person is worried or is thinking, and that is why the step cannot touch the ground, the mind cannot be with the step, but that person is only walking on his toes or her toes. So it can reflect our uneasiness, restlessness. We're holding something, we're holding the leaf. We know that the leaf is underneath the rock, so then we can remove the rock. So we pay attention, so we know what's going on. And it's not that we just pick up the leaf and then they get torn by the rock. So we learn to be aware of each moment, each movement. And that awareness helps us to be calm and clear. And so the body can be at ease and calm, and thus the mind can be at ease and calm. So in our daily life, if we are aware of each movement of our body, then the mind can be calm. Then when we do sitting meditation, it's already calm. Before we go to sleep, we can sit quietly for half an hour, 15 minutes. We come to the monastery because we want to be light, calm, stable, solid. And so that we need to make certain choices. We have to give ourselves conditions to make that happen. Like in the evening, we choose not to eat light food and not to eat so much that food that will trigger something in our body and trigger something in our mind in the night. So when we eat light, then we will not be so heavy and sleepy and groggy. As young people, we also bring in activity for the body. Like Brother Manyang, he rides the bicycle. Brothers and sisters, in the afternoon, many of us walk on the road. We walk a mile down, a mile up. So all of these activities train our body. And it gives the strength in our body. And like people say, that the mind can only be clear in a healthy body. And if we want our mind to be clear, then our body has to be healthy, has to be strong. And so steadily, regularly, each day we have to feed our body in such a way that will bring about ease, lightness, and strength. So those of us who cannot go outside, we need to take this opportunity so that a corner in our home or in our garden, we use a space so that we can exercise, a place that we can để đang lấy cái dầu kìa mẹ. We all need some sort of support. We all need a lot of support from different sources. And so in our practice, it's the same way. We need the support from like the exercise for our body, the food that we bring into our body, to our mind, support from a healthy environment. And at the same time, we need to acknowledge and recognize and treasure the good conditions that we have. And if we know how to be appreciative and creative with what we have, and we don't need to complain why I have to be confined in my house or in the monastery like this. Why do I have to stay indoor? I cannot go out. Why can't I go to the clubs? So these questions will not help us. But we can practice to be a lotus and stand right there where we are. From the root of the lotus, from the mud, we can say, right in this situation, what can I do better? And when we know what we can do better, then naturally we will have a more positive outlook, more positive attitude. And so a corner in the house or the kitchen sink where we are washing the dishes or cooking, that becomes a prayer practice, like our teacher taught us. I know you, Thầy said, I know my students love me, but on a Sunday afternoon, please allow Thầy time to wash his own clothes. Because since Thầy became a monk at the age 16, Thầy started to wash his own clothes with his own hands. And Thầy has washed his clothes all of these years. He would do it in mindfulness and he would enjoy every movement of it. And so if we feel confined, we cannot go to see a movie or do this, then we can have a different way of looking at it. How fortunate I am, I don't have to go out. I can create a meditation hall wherever it is in my house, and wherever I am, it can be my own temple, my own monastery, even our own body. That is our own temple. When our body is our temple, then it has to have an energy, and that is the spiritual energy that we generate from our practice of mindfulness. So now let us practice generating mindfulness with our mindful breathing with the bell, and we breathe in such a way that the sound of the bell penetrates all the cells in our body, and we relax all parts of our body and breathe with the out breath. I have shared about some basic practices that when we want to be our own, the king of our own kingdom of the five skandhas, then we have to hold on to the practice. Thanks to the practice, that these five hindrances will dissolve slowly over time, and our trust and faith in the practice will deepen with our experience, with our practice. There are those who may think, oh, breathing in, breathing out, walking slowly, that's not enough for me. Or we may not be patient, or we are not sincere enough, or we are not interested enough in the practice of mindfulness. We don't invest enough our mind in the present moment. It is in this very moment that each movement, each our life energy takes place in this moment. So it's the greatest investment, and we'll never lose our investment. And we will have no doubt, is this the right Dharma door for me? Do I need to find another teacher? Do I need to find another tradition? Whoever the teacher, wherever the tradition, whichever tradition, they all tell us, you are your own teacher. You are the one to give yourself happiness. Nobody can give that to you. However, the past, my past, there was a lot of suffering. Sometimes I have wished that I would vanish from this life, but I never had doubt about the Dharma. When I suffered in 2009, I wanted to just disappear, but my merits, my good, I would not lie down in a corner day after day. I would not cover myself under the blanket. The more I suffer, the more still I would sit. And I remember it was in New Hamlet. I sat up still, and there was the heater behind my back because it was during the winter. The heater was warming my back. And in my room, it was tiny, and 3 sisters were staying in that room. And I just sat there, and I just allowed my tears to roll. But I would not curl up under the blanket, but I sat up straight with my own back. And I was able to overcome that period. And I transformed that wish to disappear from this life. So suffering can pull us, and it will pull us along just like the water plant floating passively, bobbing up and down. But thanks to the capacity to sit upright with our back, then the chi, the energy, the breath in us gives us that spiritual strength, and it helps us to overcome the suffering, the pride. Just like when I live in the Sangha for 18 years now, sisters living together, it's not simple. It's not simple. When I was at home, I was the head of the family. My son's father, he respected me, and he would say, "Yes, my dear," more than 90% of the time. And my son, I only look at him, and he knew whether he needed to do this or not to do that. And in my house, it was quiet, and there was no scolding or hitting or no argument. I never needed to do that to my son since he was born until he grew up to be a young man. I just used loving speech to communicate with him. And so it trained me to be patient, to endure whatever that was happening. So I learned in life that when there's suffering, I learned to put it down and to practice with it, so that these 5 hindrances will not be the strong obstacles in my life, but I can transform them. I can go through them. When I first became a nun, a visiting nun, I was 46 years old in 2002 when I ordained. And in Vietnam, many people become nuns when they are very young. children or teenagers when they were. And so they kind of discriminate those of us who ordain when we are older. So that sister, I think that time she was in her 20s or so. And I just ordained as a novice. And she said to me, do you know, Sister Trúc Nghiêm, at your age, if you go to a temple in Vietnam, you will just be a helper. You just cook, clean the kitchen, wash dishes, stay in the kitchen to help the monks. So that's what she said to me. When I heard this nun saying that to me, because she had been a nun for a few years now, and I was only a novice, a baby nun. So I had to practice to allow the lay person in me to die. Even though I had everything, but I let go of everything so that my hands were empty so that I could be a nun. Even if you have degrees, you had material luxury, you would have to release them in order to go to the temple. And when she said that to me, I said, thank you, yes. But the rebel in me would not accept that. Right in that moment, there was a voice in me that said, let's wait and see. That was my response inwardly. Let's wait and see. Because I read, Thay's books about the history of the Vietnamese Buddhism. I read his books, his poems, his stories, history. Even the Buddha was somebody who had a family before he became an ascetic. Even the bamboo forest master or the most venerable nun in Vietnam, they all had their families, and they became enlightened. So why would I not be able to do that? So I said to myself, wait and see. I will not have the great enlightenment like the great beings, but I have enough of small enlightenments for myself. They give me the peace and the happiness for myself, and I don't need anybody to give me that. So it was that insight that allowed me to practice and to work wholeheartedly, and I did not have to follow Thầy step by, to get his acknowledgement. I would work in the cold 9 hours without a complaint. So these are the small enlightenments, small insights that we can have. I myself don't need big enlightenments, and yet over the last 18 years, I never feel that I regret the things that I left behind me, so that I'm here, and sometimes there are waves. Living in a community, sometimes there are things that we are pleased with there, but there are things that are unpleasant. There are meetings that cause us sadness. But my understanding now is that, do I want to be a victim of this situation? That statement, that action, people throw it out like that, in a circle like that. Do I want to take it inside me and regurgitate and chew it all over and over again, or keep it in my heart or not? Day after day, do I want to do that to myself? Do I want to be a victim? And the person, the rebel in me, like what Sister Đặng Nghiêm shared, we have to turn inward and be the rebel towards ourselves, against the tendency to see ourselves as victims of the suffering, victims of the actions and the speech or the situation. So we learn to be a rebel, not outwardly to the external circumstance, but we learn to turn that energy inward and rebel against our own mental formations, our hindrances. Like our teacher said, as practitioners, we are warriors, and we are also the artists, and we are the artist and the rebel and the warrior at the same time. And so I usually listen to Thay's Dharma talks in the evening, and there are many Dharma talks. But in that moment, my mind was so new and clear, new enough and clear enough, so that I use this word so that my young brothers understand that when we practice, each moment is a new moment. Like you pick up something, it's new every time you pick it up. So in that moment, my mind was new. A statement that Thầy made that was very usual, but it became like a great light for me. Thầy said, there's no self. Why do we need to remove the self? Many of us say that. We say, oh, my pride is wounded, or myself. And they said, there's no, how can there is a self? How can you remove the self if there's no self? And in that moment, like everything like shattered. I could see so much. And that's why when we have intense meetings, when we know that things will not be easy, but if we know how to come back to our breath, then we will not be victims and to bring all of those unpleasantness into ourselves. Dear community, dear friends, if you are at home right now and you watch the news, you see the ups and downs of COVID, and you are so afraid of the virus, the corona, COVID-19. But to me, I see clearly, like what Thầy said that day, the most threatening virus that is the virus of taking things for granted. That's the most dangerous virus. We have so many conditions, good conditions. We have a chance to learn. We have a chance to be loved and cared for. We have a teacher who teaches us his whole life, gives everything to us. All this is given to you, but how much do you receive? How much do you receive? How much do you apply to your daily life? Because if we don't apply it wholeheartedly in our daily life, and that virus, taking for granted, is the most dangerous virus. It causes us to jump from one place to another. Today we want so much to ordain to be able to wear this brown robe to shave our head, and then the next day we throw that rope down to find another path. Not outside, not the circumstance. It's not our own brothers and sisters that we blame on, but it's because we do not hold on to the practice. We do not make the practice as the food of our daily nourishment. We don't live with the moment deeply, and that is why it becomes our greatest failure, is that we take things for granted and we lose the path. We lose the positive conditions. And even if we don't return the rope, we still stay in the monastery. But we have to ask ourselves, the energy, the spiritual energy, the spiritual strength, is it still there, or we are dying? even in the form of a monk, shaven head with shaven head and a monastic robe on us. Are we still alive? And so this is what I want to share from my heart. And I like to use images. I like poetry, and that's why I use this image of the lotus flower. And I use the image of the water plant floating passively. So they are not to fight each other, but it's a choice we make, that we are aware of and we make. And when we have this investigation, we see it clearly and we make this choice, then we will know. Like a Zen master who praised the Zen master Tuệ Trung Thượng Sĩ. He was a layman who became a great Zen master. And this Zen master, this late Zen master, he became the teacher for the bamboo forest master in the 13th century. And when the Zen master Tuệ Trung Thượng Sĩ, when he passed away, and there was another Zen master praise him and say, "Liễn sợi tơ sen," mean to throw the lotus silk, to use the lotus silk to bind the feet of the tiger. I don't know if you know the lotus silk, so I will show it to you. A lotus silk. When you break the stem like that, can you see the silk? Yes, that's what we call as lotus silk. And somebody praised that this master was able to use the lotus silk to bind the feet of the tiger. It looks so fragile, so thin. That is our mindful breathing. That is our energy of mindfulness. That continues, that connects. It is this lotus silk. We can say that is our mindful breath. It is our mindful step combined with the mindful breath, and we bring the body back to the mind back to the body, and we can be awake in that moment. And right in that moment, the wild tigers in us, that we can call the 5 hindrances, like the craving, the grasping, attachment, running after the sight, the sound, the smell, the touch, the thoughts, pleasure of the body, or run after the past that cause us to be imprisoned. Those are the tigers, and it is this very lotus silk, this very energy of mindfulness that trains us slowly, gradually to have a capacity to master and to be able to live with the tigers in us. And the tigers can be lying somewhere there in our store consciousness, but they can be our friends. We don't have to call them tigers anymore, and we don't have to see that it's a tiger and we are the human, but we become one. We live peacefully, harmoniously together, and that's the significance of using the lotus silk to bind the tiger's feet. Or when we look at the coconut tree, and we use the parts of the coconut plant to make them into ropes. We see that if we form knots on these ropes, and they will they will be hardened and they will be tightened. But if you put them in the water, these knots, they soften, and then you can undo the knot by knot. And you also discover that as you undo the knots, like after this, with this coconut rope, you also see that they are made up of like little tiny. So a coconut is not very big, but they peel these stripes. They make them into stripes, and they tie them together to make the rope very long. So when you undo each knot, then you will realize that from so many different pieces, they are woven together to make this rope, and everything can be broken down, broken apart. And so it's the same thing for the suffering. We also learn. We learn to undo, unravel these knots, suffering in us. I also continue to learn to be passionate, to have this deep interest in the practice. When I'm able to take a step in quietness, in calmness, I'm interested when I'm able to have this lotus silk, the more strands of the lotus silk, more and more of them in my daily life. And I sincerely hope that my brothers, I cherish our brothers in Solidity Hamlet. And so I share with you from my very heart. So there's this closeness, intimacy that I share. So those who watch online, so please understand why I share these intimate stories about my life. Because I want my young brothers who are aspirants, also my young brothers who are novices, I really want to nourish you so that you can dwell, you can anchor in this community. And I also hope that those of you who are staying home, use the conditions that you have, acknowledge and cherish them, and so that you can generate a lot of mindfulness and love, and you will see, you will be able to generate these lotus silks to bind the tigers, to be with the tigers within. Thank you. To tame the tiger within.